when we hear the crucifixion story being told to us, we don't have any emotional connection to it because it's so candy-coated. If we truly understood what our Lord and Savior went through, we would not take it so lightly. Also, for those who look at things scientifically, we'll show the crucifixion through a medical perspective so you can see no one could ever survive such a suffering. So we start with taking into consideration Jesus' physical condition prior to the crucifixion. It is reasonable to assume that he was in good health prior to the whole ordeal. Also, it's reasonable to assume that he was physically fit since he was a carpenter and he was required to travel during his earthly ministry. So from there, before the crucifixion, he was forced to walk about 2 miles while having no sleep and suffered great anguish through 6 trials, was mocked, ridiculed, and severely beaten. So first we look at Jesus being whipped. During a flogging, the victim was tied to a post, leaving his back entirely exposed. The Romans used a whip called a flagrum or flagellum, which consists of several leather strands attached to it small metal balls, spikes, or hooks. Sometimes they were made of bone. When they whipped, it would strike the flesh. These balls would cause deep bruises or contusions, which would break open with further blows, and the whip would have pieces of sharp bone as well, which would cut the flesh severely. According to Deuteronomy 25:3, Jewish law dictates 40 lashes or 39 lashes, but with the Romans who whipped him, probably whipped him more than 40 times. The back would be shredded. That part of the spine was sometimes exposed by deep cuts. The whipping would have gone all the way from the shoulders to the back, to the buttocks, to the back of the legs. It would have been a gruesome sight. A 3rd century historian by the name of Eusebius describing flogging by saying, "The suffering veins were laid bare, and by the very muscles and sinews, the bowels of the victim were open to exposure." Next we look at the crown of thorns. The soldiers stripped him, put a scarlet rope on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns set on his head. The thorns may have been 1 to 2 inches long. The rope helped to clot the blood, and which helped to prevent Jesus from sustaining more blood loss. As they hit Jesus in the head, the thorns from the crown push into the skin, and he begins to bleed profusely. The thorns all causing damage to the nerves supplying the face, causing intense pain down his neck and his face and the neck, and they mocked him, and the soldiers belittled Jesus by spitting on him. They ripped off the robe of Jesus' back, which bleeding would start afresh. Jesus' physical condition becomes critical due to severe blood loss. With our placement, Jesus is undoubtedly in shock. The crucifixion. After carrying the cross, Jesus was nailed to the cross with the nails were likely to be 7 inches long with a diameter of 3/8 of an inch. Nails were all driven to the feet. The weight of the body pushes down on the nails, and the ankles support the weight. From the weight and the arm positions, Jesus couldn't breathe properly. To catch his breath, Jesus would have pushed against the nails on his feet, and from going up and down, he went from excruciating agony to excruciating agony. The collapsing lungs, failing heart, dehydration, and inability to get sufficient oxygen to the tissues essentially suffocate the victim. So after Jesus' death, the soldiers break the legs of 2 criminals crucified alongside him, causing suffocation. Death would occur quicker this way. When they came to Jesus, he was already dead, so they did not break his legs. Instead, the soldiers pierced his side with a spear to assure that he was dead. In doing so, it is reported in John 19:34 that blood and water came out, referring to the watery fluid surrounding the heart and lungs. So you see, this immense suffering Jesus went through. There's no way that Jesus could have survived this whole ordeal.